For 3,000 long years, the galaxy had been calm. Too calm, some would say. Star systems glided through time without fear. Planets flourished, civilizations reached incredible heights, and enemies became allies. The Council of Star Civilizations ruled the stars with diplomacy, wisdom, and strict peace treaties. Dozens of alien races, from the plant-like Valari to the crystalline minds of the Drex, had once been bitter rivals. But now they traded goods, shared science, and even held sporting tournaments on moons once soaked in blood. The great wars of the past had become old stories, told to children like fairy tales. The galaxy had truly forgotten what fear felt like. Among all the members of the Council, there was one species that still carried a strange energy: the humans of Earth. They were late to join the interstellar community, not arriving until the 23rd century, when they finally achieved faster-than-light travel. At first, the other civilizations had laughed at their small blue planet and their loud, unpredictable ways. But humanity surprised everyone. Within just a few decades, they had caught up technologically, mastered galactic languages, and even introduced strange things like pizza, jazz music, and dark humor to the wider universe. They rarely fought. In fact, they were always smiling, always cracking jokes, even at diplomatic meetings. Many saw them as odd but harmless. Earth was not a superpower. It was a friend. A clever, friendly species that somehow got along with everyone. Still, there were whispers, quiet ones. Some ancient species remembered how fiercely humans had once fought, back in their early wars on Earth. Some ambassadors recalled the strange spark behind a human's eyes when war was mentioned. But the galaxy was peaceful, and humans gave no sign of aggression. So those whispers faded into dust. All that changed in a single day. It began on the edge of Council space, in a quiet sector known for asteroid mining. Without warning, 20 worlds went silent. Trade stations stopped sending reports. Mining colonies went dark. At first, the Council assumed it was a system failure. But soon, frightened messages came through. Garbled transmissions, screams, the sound of explosions. The Zeltrax had returned. The Zeltrax were an old species, nearly as ancient as the Council itself. Once banished for their violent ways, these massive reptilian beings had disappeared into the deep reaches of space, far beyond where any explorer dared travel. For centuries, they had remained silent. But now they were back, and they had evolved. Their warships were monstrous, each one a floating fortress of living metal and plasma cannons. They tore through Council defenses with ease. No warning. No discussion, just one message, broadcast to every corner of the galaxy: we are the Zeltrax. The age of peace is over. Bow before us, or be destroyed. Panic rippled across the stars. The Council, unprepared for real war, scrambled to respond. Peacekeeping fleets, designed more for patrol than battle, were shattered. Civilizations that had long forgotten how to defend themselves were suddenly at risk. Emergency meetings were called. Treaties meant nothing now. The old fear had returned, and it moved faster than light. The other species screamed for help, begged for protection. Planets fortified what they could, but nothing was enough. The Zeltrax were not just attacking, they were conquering. They crushed moons under their weapons, enslaved populations, and broadcast their victories to prove their power. The Council, once proud and strong, began to crumble. But one reaction stood out from the rest. While others trembled, Earth did not. On the day the Zeltrax's message reached Earth, a gathering was held at the United Terran Assembly Hall. Ambassadors from all over the planet watched the holographic broadcast play on a massive screen. As the Zeltrax leader snarled threats in his native tongue, promising to burn Earth to ashes, the room stayed silent for a few seconds. Then someone laughed. It started as a small chuckle, coming from the corner where Admiral Juno Hawkins stood, arms folded, a sly grin on her face. Then came another laugh from a general seated in the front, and then another. Soon, the entire hall was filled with a strange, echoing sound. Laughter. Confused ambassadors from other species sent urgent messages to Earth, demanding answers. "Why are you laughing? Don't you understand? They've declared war." But Earth's reply was simple. "We do understand. That's why we're laughing." The galaxy didn't know what to make of this response. To the other civilizations, war was terrifying. To Earth, it seemed like an old friend knocking on the door. Across human colonies and orbital stations, citizens reacted not with fear, but with raised eyebrows and sarcastic jokes. News networks cracked jokes like, "Guess we'll finally get to stretch those muscles." Military academies activated long-dormant systems, and hidden command centers flickered back to life. Still, there was no sign of panic. The Zeltrax noticed this strange behavior too. Their spies watched humans closely, expecting mass evacuations, desperate preparations, or at least fear. But all they saw were calm faces and strange humor. Earth made no threats. It made no desperate calls for help. It simply watched and waited, and in that waiting, something shifted. Behind Earth's laughter was something colder, something hidden. The galaxy had forgotten one simple truth. Peace does not erase strength. It simply hides it. And in the calm before the storm, the humans began to move, not with fear, but with purpose. And somewhere, deep within the black void between stars, the first human warship, sleek, silent, and forgotten for centuries, powered up. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it had forgotten long ago. When peace ends, not all species tremble. Some smile, and some laugh. The Zeltrax, confident and cruel, watched the galaxy fall apart under their grip. System after system bent the knee. Worlds once proud now burned. The Council's finest ships were nothing against their living metal cruisers, and their armies marched across stars like an endless tide of fire. But in the center of it all, one species remained still, too still. Earth, the humans. While others cried out for mercy or scrambled to defend what remained, Earth neither surrendered nor replied with threats. Instead, it smiled. It was this unsettling calm that drew the full attention of the Zeltrax High Commander, Vorak Tun. From the bridge of his flagship, a monstrous vessel the size of a moon, he stared at the transmissions coming from Earth's capital. He saw their delegates in suits, calmly sipping coffee. He saw them walking their dogs in parks while the galaxy burned. He saw their president make jokes on live broadcasts, comparing the Zeltrax invasion to a particularly annoying case of space flu. The laughter echoed across council channels like a mockery, and the Zeltrax could no longer bear it. Furious, Vorak Tun demanded a direct transmission. The humans accepted without hesitation. The council watched as the galaxy's most feared warlord appeared face to face, virtually, with Earth's ambassador to the stars, Lily Jo. She appeared alone in the chamber, seated at a simple desk, her hair tied back neatly, a small Terran flag on her lapel. The background was calm. A window showed the curve of Earth below and peaceful blue skies. "I am Vorak Tun, conqueror of systems, scourge of the nebulae," growled the reptilian warlord, his 4 yellow eyes gleaming with rage. "You will kneel. You will surrender. Your world. This is your final warning." Ambassador Jo leaned forward slightly. Her eyes were sharp, but her voice stayed light. "You're very dramatic," she said, smiling as if she had just heard a child throw a tantrum. "But if you're finished roaring, we'd like to respond." "Respond?" Vorak Tun spat. "With what? You are insects playing civilization. Your toys will burn. Your cities will fall." The woman tapped her fingers against the desk, considering his words. Then, still smiling, she spoke one sentence that silenced the entire council feed. "You've made a mistake," she said softly. "You declared war on the one species that never stops preparing for it." There was no immediate retaliation. No blaring sirens or emergency fleets. Earth didn't launch an attack, didn't broadcast warnings. Instead, things simply started happening. On the edge of the Orion Arm, a human mining facility suddenly disappeared from Zeltrax scanners. Not destroyed, vanished. An hour later, a Zeltrax fleet near the Andromeda Gate lost control of their navigation. Their ships spun aimlessly before blinking out of existence. When the Council investigated, there were no traces of wreckage, only space that shimmered faintly, like something had bent reality itself. Then came the first sighting. A small outpost near the Draco cluster reported seeing a vessel unlike any they had ever known. It was black as shadow, triangular in shape, and moved without sound. When scanned, it showed nothing. No life, no metal signature, no energy pulse. It simply hovered in the dark, watching. Then more appeared. 10, 100, 1,000. All silent, all waiting. The Zeltrax sent scouts to engage. None returned. Back in Earth's orbit, deep within the hidden defense moon named Sanctum, Admiral Juno Hawkins stood in front of a circular table surrounded by high-ranking commanders and artificial generals. Lights blinked softly across the war map. She wore the same calm expression seen in humans everywhere during the crisis, but her voice carried steel. "Activate Sol Protocol," she ordered. The table lit up with red. Across the galaxy, old command centers buried beneath colonies came to life. Satellite defense rings that had been disguised as debris rotated into position. AI commanders, sleeping for over 2,000 years, opened their digital eyes and began calculating every move the Zeltrax had made since the first shot. Earth's military wasn't scattered, outdated, or forgotten. It had been waiting in silence, learning, improving, evolving. On the dark side of Mars, long-abandoned launch silos opened like hungry mouths. Massive railguns powered by miniature stars prepared their charges. On Jupiter's moons, robotic fleets emerged from beneath the icy crusts. Earth had not only prepared for war, it had buried its weapons in layers of history hidden under oceans, built into mountains, disguised as research labs. The Zeltrax grew anxious. They launched a full assault on a human colony near the edge of Sagittarius space. What they found wasn't a colony. It was a trap. As their ships approached, space itself turned against them. Gravity folded in unnatural ways. Time slowed. Their ships fell apart without being touched. Human defense drones appeared. Small, round, blinking like fireflies. One tiny drone flew directly into the Zeltrax flagship's bridge, hovered in front of the commander, then exploded in a burst of harmless confetti. The message was clear. We are watching. We are ready, and we don't take you seriously. Still, the Zeltrax refused to back down. Voraktun believed in brute force, not tricks. He ordered his main fleet to head straight for Earth, prepared to make an example of the laughing species. The moment they crossed into Terran territory, the stars themselves seemed to shift. Human stealth fleets uncloaked from the darkness. Ships designed not with size but with elegance, sleek as knives, faster than thought, and brimming with intelligence far beyond anything seen in the galaxy. These were not ships made for shows of strength. They were built for results. The Council watched live as the battle began, and then nothing. No footage, no explosions, no screams. Silence. 7 minutes passed, then Earth sent a single message to the Council. Engagement complete, 0 casualties, situation under control, no explanation, no demands, just calm. The galaxy had expected Earth to fall, or at least, fight with desperation. What it saw instead was a performance. A quiet demonstration of what happened when patience met preparation, when peace hid power, when an entire species smiled through the storm. And still, the humans laughed. For a brief, surreal moment, the galaxy held its breath. After Earth's unexpected display of military strength, the Zeltrax paused. They stood still in space, their ships hovering over what had once been their target, the planet that had dared to laugh at them. No one could understand what was happening. The mighty Zeltrax, who had crushed entire worlds in a heartbeat, were now stunned. It wasn't the defeat that rattled them, it was the impossibility of it. Humans had not only repelled them, they had done it with calm efficiency, without a single scream or desperate plea. The Zeltrax, masters of war for thousands of years, had never faced anything like it. They had declared war expecting a fight for survival. Instead, they found a species who seemed to have already won before the battle even began. And still, Earth didn't react with the rage of war. Instead, they took action quietly, like the turning of a page in a book. Back on Earth, life continued, as normal. The threat had been neutralized with precision, but the people didn't celebrate. There were no parades, no fireworks, no speeches of victory. News anchors went back to discussing the weather. Politicians began talking about the latest interstellar trade deals. The planet remained in the same state of peaceful, casual existence it had always known. Yet, there was an undeniable shift in the air, a sense of purpose woven into the fabric of the world that hadn't been there before. Earth had never truly feared the Zeltrax. They had always known that peace wasn't the absence of war, but the ability to choose not to engage unless absolutely necessary. And when necessary, humanity would be ready. Always ready. Admiral Juno, Hawkins, the strategist behind Earth's response, walked the halls of the Galactic Defense Command, her face a mixture of calm and focus. She had seen the outcome of the Zeltrax battle, but her mind was already moving on to the next challenge. It wasn't just about one victory. Earth had made a point, but they needed more than a single success to solidify their place in the galaxy. They needed to send a message to every species that had underestimated them, that had written them off as naive and weak. The message was simple: we are here to stay, and you will not ignore us. As Admiral Hawkins stood before the command console, her gaze locked onto the screen, where the Zeltrax fleet loomed in the distance, still processing their failure. They hadn't retreated. Yet. They were a proud species, and pride could be more dangerous than any weapon. Hawkins knew they would return. It wasn't a matter of if, but when. And so she and the commanders began to prepare. The old strategies that had been hidden for centuries, the ones humanity had forgotten, began to awaken again. They weren't just preparing for war. They were preparing to turn the tide in ways the galaxy couldn't yet imagine. The Zeltrax, on their side, were growing restless. Voraktun paced across the bridge of his flagship, his mind racing. The humans had done something he hadn't believed possible. They had taken his fleet's greatest weapon and shattered it. Not through sheer force, but through patience, through intelligence. He had underestimated them, and now his pride was bruised. He couldn't just retreat. That would show weakness. His empire was built on strength, and he would not let the humans mock that. He had ordered his fleet to wait, to regroup, but in his heart, he knew it was a matter of time before they struck again. And next time, he would not take things lightly. He would burn Earth to ashes if he had to. But for now, he needed more firepower, more weapons. Voraktun contacted his lieutenants. He ordered them to mobilize the Zeltrax's deep space war, factories located in the furthest reaches of the galaxy where no one dared to venture. They had designed weapons the likes of which no one had ever seen, machines of destruction powered by the very stars themselves. Voraktun believed the galaxy would finally understand who they were dealing with. The moment those weapons were ready, he would show Earth that their calm demeanor was nothing more than a passing illusion. Meanwhile, Earth had begun to make its own preparations, But it wasn't just military strategy that was at play. Humanity had learned something profound from this brief encounter with the Zeltrax. For the first time in centuries, the leaders of Earth gathered not just to discuss defense, but to address the heart of their existence within the galaxy. How could they stand apart from the old, tired fears of war? How could they ensure that Earth's voice would not only be heard but respected? The answer was in the humans themselves. Their spirit, their ingenuity, and their willingness to embrace peace while preparing for the worst. President Rebecca Harper stood before a global summit of political and scientific leaders, her tone calm but filled with resolve. "We've been given a gift," she said, her voice resonating through the crowded hall. "The Zeltrax have shown us our true strength, but now we must ask ourselves, how do we want to be remembered in this galaxy? Do we want to be the species that hides behind a military shield? Or do we want to be the ones who show the galaxy a different way? A way of peace, of cooperation, and, when necessary, of quiet strength." Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. For centuries, Earth had been a species of survivors, of explorers, of dreamers. Now, they were standing at the crossroads of their destiny. There would be no more hiding in the shadows of other civilizations. They would not allow themselves to be swallowed by the weight of past conflicts. The human race would redefine what it meant to be powerful, not through brute force, but through knowledge, creativity, and unity. Back in the Zeltrax fleet, Voraktun's obsession with revenge grew by the day. His empire was crumbling under the weight of defeat. The humans had shown them that war was not always the answer. That victory could be snatched from the jaws of defeat. And that knowledge, that truth, was eating away at Voraktun's mind. The power he had once known seemed fragile now, as though it could shatter at any moment. He couldn't let that happen. Not to him. Not to the Zeltrax. The countdown had begun. Soon, the new weapons would be ready, and the Zeltrax would strike. Again. But Earth had not wavered. It was as though they were watching, waiting, ready to take whatever came their way. The Zeltrax were prepared for war, but humanity had already won something far more precious than that. The galaxy was about to learn that a species could be powerful without showing its claws, could be a force without firing a single shot. And in this stillness, a new war was being waged, not between weapons, but between the very ideals of existence. The humans had made their mark, but the Zeltrax weren't done. Neither were Earth's defenders, and the battle, whether in silence or with force, was far from over. As the Zeltrax war machine rumbled to life once again, a quiet understanding settled over Earth. The galaxy had never seen a species like humanity. They had come from the edge of the galaxy, weak, fragile, and often underestimated. Yet, they had taken on the might of the Zeltrax, not through brute strength, but with something far more potent: courage, patience, and the wisdom to know that peace was just as powerful as war. The Zeltrax, enraged by their defeat and driven by their endless hunger for control, had made their final move. Voraktun had gathered every weapon at his disposal, pouring all his resources into a final assault. The galaxy held its breath once again, waiting to see if the humans would falter under the weight of such overwhelming force. The Zeltrax fleet, newly reinforced and armed with weapons capable of shattering moons, surged toward Earth. Their ships were massive, each one a floating city, brimming with weapons that could wipe entire civilizations off the map in an instant. Voraktun had ordered a full-scale attack, and his fleet moved with the cold, calculated precision of a species that knew only domination. The humans, though, remained unmoved. They knew what was coming, but they didn't fear it. They had prepared for this moment for millennia, and now they were ready to show the galaxy the true power of their resolve. Earth's leaders gathered in the war rooms, their eyes fixed on the holographic displays showing the approaching Zeltrax fleet. Admiral Juno Hawkins stood at the center, her hands clasped behind her back. There was no panic in her expression, no hint of uncertainty, just an unshakable confidence that came from years of preparation. "Activate Phase 2, she said quietly. The room went silent as the command was executed. Across the planet, deep underground facilities and hidden bases that had lain dormant for centuries began to hum with life. Secret technologies, once thought to be myths, were brought to the forefront. Earth's military had not only been prepared for war, it had been designed to be a war machine like no other, one that would remain hidden until the moment was right. This Zeltrax fleet, however, was not prepared for what happened next. The moment they entered Earth's atmosphere, they were met with a force that seemed to defy physics itself. Ships that had once been able to shatter entire planets with a single blast now found themselves caught in a net of energy that seemed to stretch and twist around them. The first Zeltrax warship to enter Earth's orbit was immediately disabled by an electromagnetic pulse so powerful it sent shockwaves through the very fabric of space. The ship went silent, its engines sputtering, its weapons systems useless. The Zeltrax commanders scrambled to regain control, but it was already too late. Their ships were surrounded, their movements slowed by invisible barriers, their technology rendered useless. Earth's defense systems, hidden in the shadows for so long, had been activated in full force. Massive orbital weapons platforms, resembling floating citadels deployed in synchronized precision. These platforms had been buried under centuries of human history, their existence a closely guarded secret. Now, they unleashed a barrage of energy beams that sliced through space with deadly accuracy, disabling the Zeltrax ships one by one. The invincible fleet, once the terror of the galaxy, found itself trapped in a web of human ingenuity. And still, the humans did not attack with rage or desperation. They simply applied their technology with methodical precision, dismantling the Zeltrax threat piece by piece. Vorak Tun, watching from his flagship, snarled in frustration. His fleet was falling apart before his eyes. His most powerful weapons, designed to crush civilizations in moments, were useless against the humans' unseen force. He had expected a straightforward conquest, but what he found was something far more dangerous. A species that had built its power not through bluster or show of strength, but through careful preparation and an understanding that true power lies in knowing when to act and when to wait. Retreat. Vorak Tun bellowed. But it was already too late. The moment he issued the order, his flagship was caught in the same trap as the others. A pulse of energy emanated from the heart of Earth's defense grid, and the Zeltrax flagship went dark. Communications were severed. The once mighty fleet that had struck terror into the galaxy was now nothing more than a floating relic, its commanders trapped and helpless. Back on Earth, a sense of calm descended. The Zeltrax had been defeated, not by sheer force, but by the will of a species that had learned the art of patience and the power of unity. The humans had shown the galaxy that there was more to strength than weapons and armies. The Zeltrax, in their arrogance, had underestimated them. They had expected fear, they had expected chaos. Instead, they had found a species that stood firm, knowing that victory was not always won in the heat of battle, but in the quiet moments of preparation, in the understanding that peace could be more powerful than war. Admiral Hawkins stood before the screens, her gaze fixed on the defeated fleet. "Phase 3, she said, her voice steady. The final phase was simple. The Zeltrax were not to be annihilated. They were to be left with a choice: leave Earth and the galaxy behind, or accept a new order, one where Earth was no longer a target, but a force to be respected. And so, the final message was sent. The transmission reached every corner of the galaxy, from the edges of the Orion Arm to the heart of the Zeltrax Empire. It was short, direct, and calm. The war is over. Your fleet is defeated. Leave our world and return to your empire. There will be no more conflict. There will be no more war. Choose wisely, for your actions will determine your future." No threats, no promises of destruction, just a quiet declaration of Earth's stance. It was a message that resonated with every species in the galaxy. Earth was no longer a world to be ignored. It had become a force to be reckoned with, a force that wielded not just weapons, but the power of choice, the power of peace. The Zeltrax, broken and humiliated, had no choice but to retreat. The empire that had once ruled through fear and domination now found itself at the mercy of a species it had thought insignificant. And as they withdrew from Earth's orbit, their ships shattered and their pride in tatters, one thing was clear: humanity had won, not through war, but through its quiet, unyielding strength. In the aftermath, Earth stood tall. The galaxy had seen what humans were capable of, not just in battle, but in the quiet power of resilience, intelligence, and patience. And for the first time in history, humanity had earned its place among the stars, not as a colony, not as a pawn, but as a force that could shape the future of the galaxy. The Zeltrax had learned the hard way: a species that refuses to be broken, that refuses to bow, can never be truly defeated.